Welcome to the first and maiden voyage of the Sabastian Show. I'm here with my brother today. Super excited to get to do this. We are going to be launching probably in the second quarter a fully banked library of podcasts, but getting to spend time with my brother, who is one of my best friends. We grew up together in the Pacific Northwest and shared the same childhood, which is unique, and there's something to be said about that. Childhood that is probably much different than a lot of people assume, just based on a lot of the comments and feedback I get. And so we're going to talk about kind of our humble beginnings and where we've come from and where we're going. And hopefully you guys will enjoy it. Welcome, brother.
It's go time.
Oh, it's go time.
Okay.
But
I thought there was
we already
like
spent
whack,
we spent about 30 minutes before talking about a book series that will probably find its way back into.
I really hope so. I gave my heart and soul into that.
Oh, well, yeah, you did. You committed, and it was great. Yeah. The Wheel of Time has quickly become my favorite series. Dialogue probably 5 or 6 times trying to find the spot.
That's the danger of listening to it at night, because then you have to start over, and suddenly you've been listening to book 6 since you were. His wife is his editor.
I know.
And so she should have told him, hey, we're burning out.
And Book 8 evidently is the favorite, and Book 13 is the most definitive, is what I'm being told.
And that's the end, isn't it? Doesn't it go to 13?
I think it's 15.
What a maniac.
I'm having a hard time with 6.
Skip. I might go get 7 and just see how it starts.
Skip it, though?
Well, I did read the plot on the Wikipedia.
You did?
I did.
This reluctant hero that's in this, oh, why me? Why is this happening to me? I'm the most powerful being in the world. It's horrible. I didn't ask for this.
And everyone else is like, if he isn't interested,
sign me up for that.
I'll take what he's having. What are you drinking?
I wonder. Why are you telling me this?
Sorry, bro. I when I study a canon, I go all the way. My bad. And then you'll want to read the prequels that explain all of how it got this way. Because the Bene Gesserit is sick.
You telling me the entire first book is him becoming emperor?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No one's ever written anything even. Hamlet is the closest piece of literature to it, as far as ascension goes, in my mind.
Fuck. Wow.
And
Okay.
That's coming from me.
Well, I'll have to get going on that because I'm going to pause on book 6.
Yeah. Well, I have a question.
Yeah.
And see how you feel about it. So, as the older I get, we both have kids.
He is the older brother, for the record.
Not just true. Not true. I got wrinkles when I laugh, and that's it.
Listen, I've had cats for the last 4 years. I've got bags where I used to never have bags. It's really been a journey for me.
You hide your bags well.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Mine are prominent. There's nothing to do about them. Well, I can't marry. So here's what I think. What I've thought a lot about healing. I'm almost positive you did that in a large way in a previous lifetime.
Yes,
I'm serious.
it's true.
No, and I want to dive into that, because I think I am engaging in stuff that there's no way you could have engaged in this lifetime. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I'm just now picking things up, but I have this ancestral pull on that definitely happened before.
But you're right. To give you you and I haven't actually, I don't think I've had this discussion, but you intuited correctly. I actually was a walk-in at about 6 years old, which is a fairly unique thing. So a walk-in would be a soul that drops into the body after the fact.
Okay.
And so due to what is coming and what is necessary on Earth, I essentially said, yeah, I'll be your Huckleberry. Let's get to work. So I've been done with this plane, although I have a vested interest in its success. And so it's kind of the easiest way to explain that for those who are going, what the fuck are you talking about? Basically, it's like you graduated university and you're done, but you have an opportunity to come back and teach.
Right.
So that's essentially what it is. So that's why there, especially in our childhood, there were certain things that were, at least from my experience, far more impactful or traumatic for you than they were for me, because that wasn't that work I already had done. Now, to be clear, nobody escapes the work.
Yep.
Everyone has to do the work.
Yep.
So it's not like you you get to avoid it. I just had already done it.
And I get that's the sense that I'm starting to like. I feel that this last year I've just been really cognizant of that, like, because it's immense, and it could take a lifetime, but it does whatever it needs to do. It doesn't matter, So, but
Yes.
I get that sense.
Yeah. So, and I'm excited to move into a season where I feel like I have been, for lack of a better way of putting it, hidden, covered, shielded for such a time as this. For most of my life, I've heard, no, not yet. No, not yet. And there's lots that goes into that, I think, that is interesting. But I'm in a season now where I feel like it's game time. Like I get to come out and play.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm kind of moving into that. It's increasing its intensity, which is fun.
And have you lost interest in POTUS?
No, and if anything, it's increased reluctantly.
Mm-hmm.
So I still will maintain that if there is a better man for the job, then I will humbly bow out. But if
By what we're seeing,
but if this doesn't change, then I will run.
does that start local?
Great question. I probably would run for governor first, just to get my feet wet.
Yep.
And then president. But I'm really hoping that there are some amazing people who step up, and that doesn't need to happen.
Because are you reluctant in that? That's not something that's like
I
a
don't
desire?
have any passion to be in politics. I will do what is necessary. I'll do what is needed, and so if that is called upon me to do, and then I will do it. But it's not what I want.
From what I understand about real leadership, you just signed yourself up for it. If you have a desire for it, there might be something wrong with your.
Well, I'm 100% with you on that. Like, especially American politics right now. If that's like something you want to get into, I'm kind of like,
yeah.
It's just I like, obviously, growing up in a military family, I grew up with a disproportionate, perhaps, love for my country and patriotism that actually I figured out goes back many lifetimes. Hamilton. Yeah.
You think so?
Yeah, well, it's interesting, but there's been a few reoccurrences of this theme, but I love the United States, and this has been something that the United States has been put into work for a very long time for this time in history, and I firmly believe the best days of this country are still ahead of it. But we are in a tumultuous time where there is a lot of change that is necessary, and that's, by the way, fairly normal. We're in transition and that's a fun time to be on this planet. And we could talk about a lot of people dropping in for this very moment for this reason. It's a fun time to be on the planet because this is literally 10,000 years in the making.
Agreed.
Give or take. And as far as I can tell, we've been here at least 2 other times that I'm consciously aware of. And both times, we know the end, we fucked it up. We literally blew up. No, not Roman. This is... the 2 societies that I'd be citing is Lemuria and Atlantis, which through tectonic shifts and literally the entire planet reset itself. Literally, like it would be like the easiest way to describe it is the designers were like, okay, that didn't work.
Yeah.
Reset, take the genetic material and design that is there and let it rebuild itself.
Yep.
So like you burn the whole bitch to the ground and build it over and help it do this again. So the big difference is in this particular run, we relied more heavily on material science, right? Physics as we know it.
Yep.
And so more of the material world and science as it's related to that, which is a pivot which they felt would be more stable for humans to learn from than spiritual technology. Spiritual technology is much cleaner, way cleaner from an environmental standpoint, but is far more powerful and has a bigger effect where like your room for error is way less. And so this is getting really into the weeds very, very quickly, but at the end of Atlantis, which it's interesting that people want to play down Atlantis. You know who we get all of our understanding of Atlantis from? Socrates.
Oh, okay.
Who is, nobody contends the reality. He had an uncle, Solaris, I believe, who had gone to Egypt and was reading the text about Atlantis in Egypt 300 years before Plato, or Socrates. So anyway, everything we understand about Atlantis really comes through him, about this superior civilization that ruled, and then they became haughty and arrogant, and their entire city was swallowed up in the ocean, which, by the way, the Atlantic Ocean, Atlantis.
And that's a reset.
That's
a conscious reset.
It was a total reset. So it's interesting, if you look at the pyramids, we still don't understand how the pyramids were built, and they were not built in this millennium. They were a holdover from that time period. And even the Egyptians at that time acknowledged that. The original pyramids, they didn't even understand how to use the technology.
We also know that all the continents fit.
Right. Well, Pangea, at some point, they all fit together. So, and we know that we're now finding archaeology at the bottom of the ocean that is unexplainable. Right? Whereas more and more is happening in the world, we're like, okay. So it's funny, and the reason we're finding this out now is because we're ready to try this again, which is humanity gets a shot at ascension, where we, through our design, are able to fully express ourselves in body and spirit and ascend into the fifth dimension. Consciousness rises to that point, which is largely a massive scientific experiment to see if it's possible, right? And so using spiritual technology, we got pretty close, but the egoic consciousness seemed to have, there was a power struggle, ended up essentially resetting the planet. But using mostly, it was much cleaner. Like for instance, which is hard for a lot of people to get, and we're jumping right into it, but a lot of the things that have endured through time, we still don't know how they were built functionally. Like the pyramids, like that. Have anybody tried to explain to you?
We can send someone to the moon, but
we have no idea.
We're not good on that.
And there are people who are trying to project theories, but the fact, with today's technology, we could not build the pyramids with the cranes we use today. Right. So what you hear is throw enough slaves at it, 16,000 or 160,000 slaves, and we could do it. And like, yeah, they had to go up and then down a chamber in the middle. Well, the understanding of that technology was that essentially we were using telekinesis to move those things, which can be a hell of a jump for some people to understand. And still, until you start looking at other things. Easter Island, the largest statue in Easter Island is 70 feet tall.
Stonehenge doesn't make a lot of sense.
It's like from 200 miles away, those stones moved. So there are technologies, something was going on, that there are things we can't explain based on what we thought of the people who built them. Pyramids are an interesting one. You see pyramids on multiple continents around the world. But anyway, all that to say, we've been on this run where we get to about this 10,000 year mark, and we have an opportunity to ascend or blow up. And so here we are again. And in this case, we used physical technology to get this far because we believed it would be much more stable and diffused, which it generally has been, save the atom bomb, which I guess, as I understand, was a very real threat for some time, but now is way off its highs. But there was, in the 1950s and into the early 60s, there was a very real threat of humanity destroying itself with nuclear war.
People talk about this as like it's the scariest time in the world. Are you kidding? Like the American Civil War, anybody? Do you have any idea how horrifying that would be?
Children talk about it like this is the hardest time in history. Like, in children, I mean, like under the age of 20. And it's like, no doubt the same group that thought history was a waste of time, or thought that history should be rewrote, or has a lot of inconvenient truths in it.
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't have to go too far back in history. 1960, we have 1960s. We had JFK get assassinated. We were 13 seconds away from nuclear war.
Cuban Missile Crisis, right?
Right. And then bomb shelters, nuclear bomb shelters were like a thing. Like, this is what we're going to do if nuclear war happens. Right? And which it's important to say, even as we say that, is not to make light that there aren't very real issues, right, in our world right now. There are real issues in our world. There are very real things that we have to overcome. It's just the mind, through its desire to feel special, wants to believe that its suffering now is the worst it's ever been. Yeah. Humans are the best at wanting to make their suffering special. And to me, it's absolutely hilarious that it's like,
nothing validates the ego more.
Yeah. Like, what the fuck? Be special in your pleasure. Why pick suffering? Right? You know what I mean? Like, leave it to humans.
It's ancient.
To think, oh yeah. It is.
Well,
It
let
is
me
very
ask you
ancient.
this, and we are a little in the weeds, but I want to bring it back to what do you want to do, or what would you do in political, like, because you said there's a lot of things that you do think, like, what would you do? What would be like any like reforms off the top of your head that you want to be interested in?
Yeah. So you major on majors, not on minors. So a few things. One, be a catalyst for change that brings unity, where the majority is truly represented. And again, whether it be a country, whether it be a individual, a person, a business, these characteristics remain the same for the healthiest, long-lasting relationships. They're shared vision. We have an agreed upon way that we're moving forward in the world, right? And so that's important to me. And that's broken right now, right? We're kind of the U.S. is fairly listless right now. Like we're not our listing, I guess. We don't really know where our direction is anymore, because we've become, much like many other empires, we've become fat, inefficient, and very self-interested. Right? And there are other countries that are coming up right now with a chip on their shoulder. China being one of them, which I don't see them as an enemy at all. They potentially could become an enemy and a very real threat, but I don't see them inherently as an enemy. We just got to get better at working with people, and we, owned the show for a very long time, and as we should rightfully had. But great leadership is knowing when to step aside or make room for others, and I think that's something that we need to do, and it's important to do. But that comes down to trust. So one is unity, but you got a shared vision. Number two is shared values. So we got to get calibrated around a set of values that everyone is behind. And then we got to have a way that we deal with real conflict. Right? Like our system for dealing with conflict is non-existent. And so now you got a situation in American politics where even, I've heard it over and over again, in the 80s and 90s, you'd have politicians yelling at each other from across the aisle from different parties, but they'd go have a beer and a sandwich afterwards and talk it out. Like they weren't enemies. They just they were on the other side. Now it's like they don't spend any time talking to each other.
It's highly aggressive.
It's just
the
like, I'm just
bipartisan
going to
thing?
push. Yeah, I'm just going to push my agenda. I don't give like that is incredibly dysfunctional.
It's scary
for the highest levels of government to be functioning that way.
Yeah,
and so there's where the work is, and it's. I get why this is happening is because our ideologies are changing, which were somewhat inevitable, considering what our country was built on, right? And as we become more successful, you have more people that want to come here. The more people that want to come here, the more that they have an impact on how things look and see, and they're bringing their flavor from where they came from. So you see a lot of cultural, like the values aren't what they used to be because we're not, the downside to our culture is we're not a homogenous group. We never have been, which is beautiful until it isn't. When you look at the most stable countries, no, not surprisingly, the happiest countries in the world are all in Scandinavia. It makes me laugh. It's like, obviously, that's our genetic bloodline. But they're also highly homogenous countries, right? Which makes sense. Why? Because you have shared vision, shared values, and shared way you deal with conflict. It isn't a melting pot like it is here.
So let me ask you, because what I've noticed in history, especially American history, there's usually crisis,
right,
and then growth.
Correct.
So do we have to, like, would you want to, is that what you're saying? You want to, like, find a way to not have crisis for growth?
I hope that we run into a way to move forward that does not involve a World War III or a dire economic situation. But historically, that's usually what unifies everyone, right? We have a common enemy, vision. We have values. We're doing this for king and country.
The men are fighting, the women are making bullets.
Right, right. And we know who our enemy is. So the conflict resolution is a lot cleaner. So unfortunately, and that's usually, the United States, the countries that are coming up very often see us as the enemy. If you go look at China and you look at how they're running war games, they're not running it against fucking Japan or Iran. They're running it against the United States, right? They have a common, I don't know if, hopefully they wouldn't say we're enemy, but at least the adversary, and we made them. We literally made them.
I'll tell you a quick story. It's funny. I was flying from Brussels to Stockholm to go visit Johanna, and I was sitting next to this, like, he was in a business suit, nice man. He spoke English, high Swedish accent. And he actually said to me, which I didn't at the time, I was just chatting, but he's like, you guys have so much potential, but you guys keep screwing it up. And I remember that hit me, and he said it in his like really deep Scandinavian accent. I was like, okay.
Well, I love that you're saying that, and I feel the same. We have an incredible potential here. We just need better leadership. And that's why I eventually will run or will find somebody to run.
Well, I endorse these ideas, my friend.
We got to. We got to get united, and realize that there's far more unites us than separates us.
Agreed.
And it's, again, if you study history, it's the country. The empire has always crumbled from the inside out.
Yeah.
It was always internal division and strife, and usually large levels of liberal immorality, if you will, just a lack of moral compass or values that lead to the destruction of countries. And it's like, does anybody read anymore? And then it sucks when you say that and people are like, oh, history is only written by the victor. And what the fuck else do we have to go on?
It's not even
This
true.
is why I collect, I know you do too, but the Napoleon.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That was written at the time.
At the time he was alive.
Exactly.
So then it's like, go ahead and try to reconstruct history. What are you going on, fuckstick? I have a book that was written when he was still alive.
Exactly.
Versus like,
He wasn't vilified.
no, he wasn't.
Statistically, a lot of things have changed since of separation of church and state. Mm-hmm. I'm curious about that because do we need the unified religion or did the religion unify us? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So what is that? Like, I'm curious what you think.
So what Judeo-Christian, there is a negative residual effect of Judeo-Christian culture too.
Sure, yeah.
There is a karmic debt that is being paid into that now, which is why we're seeing the negative side of it.
Unpack that. Because that was in the 60s, right?
Yeah,
When we said
and
more Bible.
And I will explain in a second. But it did bring a set of shared values. And religion functions for humanity like scaffolding. It supports the value systems as they're being built so they have something to go on.
Yeah.
We may see a kind of resurgence or revival of Judeo-Christian values, but the face of Christianity is going to change radically, and it's going to look much different. It will become largely irrelevant because it's I think right there in I think it's 2 Timothy, if I remember correctly, maybe it's Thessalonians. 2 Timothy, yeah. Having a form of godliness, but denying its power.
Right.
Where what happens then it becomes very much an intellectual pursuit, which inevitably turns to judgment. And so Christianity lost its way because it started to become irrelevant because it became more a mechanism for judging people than it did for helping people. And without the power, like Christ was effective because before he ever communicated the truth in words, he demonstrated the truth in power. So people listened because they're like, what the fuck? You just, made that guy walk and he was born lame, right? Or like, oh, that guy was dead and now he's not. I'm listening.
Is there a watershed of impact from values? Because that's what it was, right? Like the 10 Commandments, it's a set of you have values for FCG, right? So how big can you scale something before it's just
and it isn't
splintered?
It isn't. I mean, scalability is a thing, and that's I think part of the reason the Scandinavian countries have largely stayed healthy and whole and peaceful is because they are largely homogenous groups of people who have a shared value system, and they have horrifically hard immigration. Right, which is hilarious. People are like, well, why can't we be like? I'm like, listen, motherfucker. First of all, you could take all the Scandinavian countries together combined, and they're not the size of the United States. And so,
True.
It's like, well, why can't we be like them? Like, well, we should probably look at what makes them them. But values is one. Because we're a melting pot, people bring their values and their desires, right, with them.
Yeah.
And so if they don't integrate, and if the American culture is strong enough, then they'll inherit the American culture. But over time, if the system gets too top-heavy, then you see a disconnect in values. But going back to Christianity, it was a powerful kind of manual on how to live.
Exactly.
And it worked, but the residual downside of it is it comes with heavy amounts of judgment. And so... And we've seen this mistake a few times, but you see an incredible amount of judgment that ultimately makes it irrelevant. So instead of being able to intelligently and relationally navigate through some of the tougher issues in our society, it just judges people. And as soon as you do that, judgment creates separation creates division, and now you have no influence. And so you've seen that over and over again.
Over and over again.
and not the first time, the Catholic Church did this, right? I mean, science as we know it today was really born out of an antithesis for religion, and specifically the Catholic Church, because from its pompous place of arrogance, it wanted to insist it knew how everything was in the world and to listen to it. And oh, by the way, we're the only ones that can read this book. And so we're going to make up whatever the fuck we want, and you're going to listen.
Because there's so much legalese and terminology, you won't understand it anyway.
Yeah, and then just
Six
trust
of us
but
get
just,
it, though.
But just trust us. It's
Yeah.
going to be good, right? And then Galileo, very simply, is trying to explain, and Confucius before him, hey, guys, I think we're in a heliocentric universe, not a geocentric. And they're like, oh, no.
Emancipated minds always connect things and say, they're almost the same, guys. And they're like, no.
Yeah, it's like,
No, they're not.
no, they're not. So what ends up happening? Well, then you have this massive distrust for the church. And, okay, we're going to come up with a formula for discerning the world that is fair and rational and logical. You get into the Enlightenment era, and the Industrial Revolution comes from that. And science had a massively powerful and positive impact on the world. But it's still, when we react to error, we cause more error. It was born out of an antithesis for the church. So if you notice, science to this day has this tanginess to like the way it talks about, like you'll as an example, if you hear a scientist talk about love or compassion, they'll literally say, I'm a scientist, I shouldn't feel this way, as if they have to disclose their scientific mind as a reason for why they can't experience an emotion. It's like, God, what are we doing? That happened because it became a response to religion. Again, when we react to error, we cause more error. And then for specifically the last couple hundred years, science has really been able to pick up a lot of the low-hanging fruit in the world as far as truth and understanding goes, just employing the scientific method, right? There was a lot of things we were trying to understand. Scientific method does a long ways to helping us understand our world. But now it's at its fringes, right? Because its capacity essentially is the first three dimensions. And there's an insane amount of arrogance inside of the scientific community that is not unlike what the Catholic Church was doing.
Yeah.
Where now you see in the last couple of years especially, oh, we're scientists. It's scientifically proven. We'll quiet any voice that isn't us. We will challenge any voice or try to, attack any voice that challenges the institution. Like, where the fuck have we seen this play before?
Yeah, totally.
It's the Catholic Church all over again, which is, again, it is a human tendency, because if you react to error, you cause more error. So it's not surprising to me to see the scientific community acting like the church today, only thinking the scientific method is a far superior reason to do so.
Totally.
It's just like, the people, the Catholic Church thought the Bible was a far superior reason to do. And I like both the Bible and the scientific community.
Totally.
So for me, it's just like, guys, get your heads out of your asses.
Like I love
both
Buddha
of you.
and Jesus.
Yes, exactly. It's like, see the
they're
whole
beautiful.
instead of your divided little parts, and this world will get a lot better.
Yeah.
But science is probably, there's a lot of people are confused why science isn't trusted anymore. And all you have to do is go, well, why was the church no longer trusted? And you'll hear things like, well, the church didn't have humans' best interest in heart. Okay, good. The church used religion and scripture to get people to do really stupid, insane things. Good. The church abused its power to generate revenue for governments and itself. Oh. Good. Wait. Were we talking about the church, or were we talking about science? Somewhere I cue the last 3 years.
100%.
The amount of times I heard it's been scientifically proven, and like, get the fuck out of here with that phrase.
Yeah.
And unproven.
And then unproven, and then proven, and then unproven.
And here's the reason why. Again, I'm not against science. The scientific method is a beautiful tool for trying to understand your world. The issue is it still has humans involved.
Yeah.
And as long as humans are involved, their perspective, their biases, their agendas get involved.
As long as I observe it, it can't be what I think it is.
100%.
That's a rule.
As a whole, your subjectivity, even in the scientific method, is going to create problems. But we can get past some of that. It's more the biases of human nature and the human agenda to push particular things. You'll just find a new weapon to use. And in this case, science has been weaponized.
Yeah.
This is my favorite thing to ask every time he says that. I'm like, which scientists?
Yeah.
Which group are you referring
And
to?
then why
there
are there
isn't
two scientists that have different views?
Right.
Because then
and
that
then
tells you
why
a
are
lot.
we not okay with that?
Exactly.
And that's the problem is because science is at its fringes now of what it can explain. So now it's doing the same fucking thing the church did, and it's just making it up as it goes, and now it's getting exposed.
And by the way, the spiritual text was like incomprehensible to the layman. Nobody could speak it, and so it was driven by a small sect of people, and everyone else was like, "What did he say? I don't know."
It was just do what he says. Do what he says.
Yeah,
Do
he
what he
says,
says.
clap, clap, clap.
So here we go again. Why? Because humans are horrifically bad at remembering.
Totally.
If that is all we did, just remember. That's like my message everywhere I go. Just remember.
Yeah.
Right? Just ask yourself, how could this be so? How could this be different? Right? Is there another way to look at this? Help me remember. And if we begin to remember, this world will change in a positive way.
Yeah.
Much quicker. And I think history, just study history.
So here's a fun one. So in business, in whatever, what are you using right now to stay present? And what I mean by that is like practice. Do you have any practices that you're using? Just because obviously you're getting pulled in a million. I've watched you this morning go from like 5 different intensive, you're needed, you're the focal point, small, big, whatever. How do you stay present?
How do I?
Assuming you do.
It's an interesting thing. The question is interesting to me because I can understand the human experience in this, but for me, the question is, how are you not present? Like, where else are you?
Mm-hmm.
So, as a whole, which isn't to say that I don't spend very little time. I spend very little time in the past unless it's studying it for some kind of precedent or understanding of how things are going to go. As the old saying goes, the easiest way to predict the future is to understand the past, which isn't to say that's 100% accurate, but it's a great place to start. I'm naturally a strategist and a planner, so I do spend time in the future, but as a whole, I don't struggle being present because I don't know where else I would be. If I'm not present, I'm not here.
Yep.
And that's probably worth saying again. If I'm not present, it means I'm not here.
Yeah.
So then where the fuck am I?
Let me say it another way. I think a lot of people with what's pulled on them wouldn't be able to stay present. So is there a practice that you use to do that? Or is that a practice you've done so often that now it's part of you?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, if it starts with you inherited it, then it's not going to help anymore.
I know. That's what I'm trying to.
Because I'm
I don't
worried
remember.
that's your answer.
I don't remember a time not being present.
Yeah, I don't either.
And if
I do.
I mean, I've had seasons of pain.
Seasons.
Seasons of pain. But if I wasn't present, it was because I was escaping the season of pain or trying my best to do so. I haven't struggled with being present. To me, that's the reason to be here. Otherwise, why be here?
So,
but tools, it's a muscle. It's a muscle like any other. So you just practice gently bringing your mind back to the present moment. My experience has been whoever is most present in any conversation has the most influence and power. Mm-hmm. So it makes sense to be present. So my first book that I'm writing, which will be out before the end of the year, is on identity. But shortly thereafter, probably in 2024, my second book will be on attention, which is to your question. That's the reason is because attention, we have to learn how to take back our attention. Like, think about this. Christ was so present and so aware of his energy field that a woman grabbed the hem of his garment and he knew it, right? Because that was a energetic exchange that he was fully aware of. Now, any of us could have the capacity to do that if we were present to do that.
Yep.
So to me, that's the game. And I get asked quite a bit for whatever reason. Every time I go on live, somebody wants to ask me if I believe in Jesus, which is such an odd, I get the human reason for asking it, but it's such an odd question to me.
Really?
Yeah, because there's a lot that is, especially in Judeo-Christian culture, to say, do you believe in Jesus? If I say yes, which is accurate, obviously, then the mind of the human, you inherit their whole story about what they think that means.
Yeah, so you have to unpack it real first before you go in.
Right, and I don't generally have time to do that, nor do I want to unpack it that way. So either don't answer the question, or I'm like, well, yes, of course I believe in Jesus, but I don't. Again, to particular group of people asking that question, that comes with their own assumptions about what they think that means. Yeah. And I find a lot of communication is getting really good at understanding, operating through, and clearly penetrating other people's assumptions. Yeah. Which sometimes means you get somewhat wordy in what you're saying, or you allow them to, I guess sometimes it strategically can make sense to allow them to make their assumptions and not do anything about it.
Yeah. God Emperor
I'll get it. I'm pretty sure I read
No, you couldn't have.
but I
You couldn't have. Do you know about the twins?
that's his sons, right?
Paul's.
Yeah,
He has a daughter and a son.
but they're twins.
They're twins.
Does sound familiar.
And this Frank Herbert and Tolkien are so deep with, and that's what like most people read fantasy.
They weren't contemporaries though, right? He was Frank Herbert was next generation, right?
Totally contemporaries.
They were contemporaries.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Tolkien died in the 80s, and Herbert wrote Dune in the 60s. So yeah.
Get the fuck out of here.
I don't know if they hung out, but I know that they were relatively contemporary.
Tolkien was around in the 80s?
Yeah, he died in the 80s.
That can't be.
I promise you. Live forever.
It's not the
These
80s.
guys, these happy writers. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
73, yeah. 70s, that's a long time
was
ago. It's hard to know anybody who was born in the 70s.
We had a... yeah, no, it was a long time ago. I can't believe we'd still be alive. The start-stop on the 60s, maybe it wasn't a stop. Maybe it was a first hurrah that led to a solidification. But they were on to something in the 60s.
Oh, for sure.
There was a massive
for sure
tectonic revolution that was happening under the surface that I don't know if it was a combination of their own immaturity, lack of leadership, which is possible, and then suppression by groups that didn't like it, kind of transmuted it or suppressed it, but it's coming back. And I'm like, as I'm studying that time period, it's like, it's where you get the civil rights movement. People, the only war that we've, the Vietnam War, which technically wasn't even a war in the military, police action, we had Americans going, I don't want to go to war. I don't want to go kill someone on the other side of the country. And then you start looking at what's going on. It's like LSD was
the psychedelic revolution.
The psychedelic revolution was going on. People were changing the way they were looking at their world. And then frickin' Nixon comes out and goes, none of this is good for my agenda. So let's make psychedelics illegal.
Let's squash these things.
Yeah, it's like just so incredibly short-sighted. And now we're realizing the incredible medicinal impact of psychedelics to help people with PTSD, anxiety, depression, and they're not a biologically addictive substance at all. Nobody does fucking ayahuasca and then turns around and goes, yeah, let's run it back again.
It's not something that happens.
Yeah.
You don't go driving. You don't go do anything wild. And that was a liberated time. Like it
100%.
Really was. Like
and then
melange, sorry, I keep going back to this.
Yeah.
Melange is like, that's exactly what that is.
Oh yeah, that's
melange fuels the ability to travel in between planets, which is
that was what the harvesters were getting, right?
Going on trips, right? And so that's why Arrakis became Dune. And so it's so relevant to this whole story is the ability to transmit through time and space. And melange allows that. That's why I'm telling you, like, there's so many layers in that.
That's what they the sparkly blue.
Well, that's what they do in the book, but it's not how it goes.
Yeah,
they put it in everything in the books. Like they have melange coffee every day, and like it's part of their life, just like it is in many parts of South America.
Yeah.
Like when psilocybin came back in the 60s, they all went down to this woman. She was the first shaman.
Mexico, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they ruined the city and ruined her. She was stoned and they burned her house down because everybody wanted to come down and this is a poor term, but Americanize it. And the woman who founded it down there was stoned and cast out because they were like, you ruined our city. Have you watched Change Your Mind on Netflix?
Yeah, fantastic.
That's what it is. That's where I learned that.
I haven't gotten to that episode. My next episode is on psilocybin,
Yep.
So I haven't gotten there. But I have the book, which is also a tome called Change Your Mind.
And that's Polian? No, not Polian.
Michael Pollan.
Pollan.
Yeah. Yeah, I am very excited about the psychedelic revolution again.
Yeah.
And so going back to the political questions, that is something I would fast track if it isn't already done, and hopefully it is done by the time I'm in office. I would fast track the legalization of basically all drugs, not because I am a fan of taking drugs to escape your world. I'm not. What I am a bigger enemy of is telling people what to do with their fucking bodies.
Yeah.
Like this drives me up a wall.
It's crazy.
Like the idea that you could pick up a mushroom in the woods, eat it, and by law, you are making a criminal act.
Be taken away from your family.
You're like, are you out of your fucking mind?
That's what we do. That's what we do.
Yeah, most laws are created to solve for stupid. The problem is if that's how you decide to solve for problems, you will literally make your society stupid.
Yep.
And that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
Like we're killing free thinking. We're killing freedom of expression. It's a very interesting time, and in the effort to constantly control people and solve for stupid. Here's a crazy idea: let them be them, and if they tap out as a result of that, that's on them.
Yeah, because they're gonna get another shot.
Yeah, they're going to get another shot. They're going to have to figure it out.
And here's the other thing: someone in a tribe is unstable, depressed, moody, schizophrenic. Guess where they go? To the shaman.
Right.
Come talk to the shaman, and they work on it.
Yeah, and there's community and connection there.
And it's
now,
for free.
For those who are wondering around the policy around that, this is what I would say. I think fentanyl is straight evil.
Scary.
In what's happening there is very, very scary. So there are certain drugs that I would still not make accessible, or at least educate people on to why to stay the fuck.
Just stop making it.
Just growing up, even like the quote unquote druggy community knew to stay away from heroin and fentanyl. They're like, these are all good, but stay the fuck away from that. Yeah. Like, what is happening right now? So there are certain drugs that the risk is on another level. So maybe you restrict the ability to get to that quickly, or maybe not. But to me, you get to choose what gets put in your body. You also have to own the responsibility of whatever happens.
That's right.
Right? So whatever those consequences are, you also own the responsibility of that. That is a much more effective way to teach people how to think versus forcing them what to think.
So we're just trying to police everybody's sandbox.
Right.
And that sucks. No, that's why people aren't growing.
Correct. And then what happens is when you do that, the system eventually creates Neo.
Yeah.
Right? Somebody who says, okay, this no longer works. The whole system needs to come down because you're repressing human consciousness.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening. It's like there's these huge my favorite of the three in the Matrix series is by far number one, but my favorite dialogue in the entire series is his dialogue with the architect.
With the architect, yes.
And this is the whole fucking thing. They're like, we made a perfect world, Neo. You guys just rejected it.
Yeah.
And so we had to create this imperfect world that had this anomaly that kept carrying until it produced the Messiah, essentially, or Neo.
We have to.
But it's when you force repression of understanding growth and consciousness on a group, it eventually will rebel. Whereas if you give it space and freedom, the whole universe wants to come to homeostasis. It's by design seeking for homeostasis. Yeah, that was the big aha. If you've read, I'm sure you have, Joseph Campbell's work, The Hero's Journey, which inspired Star Wars, which is top 3, maybe top 5 universes for me. I really enjoy the Star Wars series for a number of reasons. But I didn't hear it forever until I heard it. So in my mind, in the early days when I heard it, bring balance to the Force, I thought, oh yeah, the Jedi win.
Right.
The Jedi are supposed to overcome the Sith and bring balance. No, the balance is neither. Right? Neither have to exist. Like, fuck me, it was there the whole time and I didn't see it. Yeah. Right? That's homeostasis.
Yes.
And so the universe, the physical world, is always looking by design for homeostasis. So if you go too fucking far this direction, dude, just do the math. It's coming back the other direction.
Dude, I can talk to you about this. You know, I'm fascinated with anatomy and physiology and all that stuff. Like we talk about health nuts. What does that even mean? Why did that ever need to happen?
Oh boy.
Do you understand? We were talking about homeostasis. Your body will live a very long time as long as you simply give it what it asks for.
Yes.
And stop putting all this crap in that is just incredible. Like, there's no mystery to me about diabetes, about the big 4 killers as far as Asprey calls them.
Yeah.
There's no mystery to that stuff. I look at people in our family, I'm like, dude, it's Coca-Cola. It's, you know what I'm saying? It's mainlining garbage, but your body is desperately at all times trying to get you there. So if you sleep too much, probably because your body's trying to detox you, and that's a sign. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like, this world is, I think, a manifestation of us. The kingdom of heaven is within us.
It 100% is.
So
and that's
the earth is doing the same thing.
And that's the work right now in raising consciousness, is realizing we're creating this.
How many people have to be conscious, or what one conscious person carries
1 to 1,000.
You think so?
Yeah, well, and it depends on how conscious they are. It is. Well, it depends on if you're over 200, and this is an arbitrary number based on transcending levels of consciousness.
Yeah.
It compounds to the 10th power on every level.
Oh.
So it can get like where you could have a few a few that are coming in that 7 to 1,000 range that are holding down the planet.
Yep.
But as they bounce, and some of them are, it's because there's a newer generation stepping up, which I'm very excited about.
Do you know Thich Nhat Hanh?
Oh yeah.
When he passed, like I felt it.
The reverberation.
For sure.
Yeah. And there are
so much.
there are many beings that are here simply to hold space. And many of them, because they're here to hold space, like once you get to a certain level of enlightenment, much of the world's drama becomes disinteresting to you. Like you're not chasing success for success sake. It's not that you don't want money, or you don't want to drive a Lamborghini, or you don't want to live in a big house, but it's not your identity. So many of them are here and are not known by design. They're not trying to be known. Their entire reason for being here is simply to hold energetic space. They could be living in a fucking cave or in the jungle somewhere and be totally happy. And then there are others who are probably pulling like Batman-like status, where they have this Playboy image to the world, and on the other end, they're,
what I was going to share, I'm almost 100% confident that's my whole role this time, and I've been rejecting that, and that's where all the pain has been.
It's just to hold space.
Yeah. I feel it because I feel people all the time, and it's hard for a lot of different reasons for me. But then when I'm in that space, I'm whole.
You're like,
it's like, and I can be there so peacefully, and like I hold space for you all the time. I hold space for my kids, but like I'm starting to hold space for
humanity.
More. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a muscle you flex, and then you can get stronger and stronger at it.
Yeah.
And you can creation happens from being in action.
Yep.
Right. So a lot of people who are stuck in the rat race, many are very, very successful. They're still stuck in doing because they're trying to run from something. Right. They're just 1 more million and I'll be happy. 1 more million and everything will be good. 1 more million and right, or whatever it is. So I am a huge advocate of success, define however you want. I'm a massive advocate of money. I think money is a lot of fun and a very useful tool. But don't misunderstand what I am not saying. It can't be, or can be if you want it to be, but it is a horrible master. Right? We were never meant to serve money. Money was meant to serve us.
Totally.
And too many people are chasing things because they're not wanting to do the internal work. And so it reminds me of the story of the man that had the dream, and every time he dropped into this dream, he was being chased by a tiger. And he's talking to, I think he was talking to a therapist about it, if I remember the story right. And he kept chasing, he'd drop into this dream, and he'd keep running from this tiger. And he's like, dude, I keep having the same fucking dream over and over and over again. I keep running from this tiger. And I think therapist was like, well, have you asked it what it wants? Right? He's like, oh, fuck, no.
Why would I do that?
Yeah, it's like, it's a fucking tiger. Like, who does that?
You dropped your wallet.
So he finally does, and he turns around, and it opens up this entire journey to him that he was running away from his destiny, essentially. And so a lot of people get busy as a way to run away from the work. Right? And so then they get stuck. And I at this point in my life, just the amount of people I interact with and coach and develop from all walks of life, I see this where it's like, if you do the work, more often than not, your natural state, in all cases, you do the work, your natural state is abundance. But abundance will look different to different people based on what they're doing, their calling, their desires.
Totally.
Right? And so, and that's the frame. It's like, I never try to tell somebody what success looks like. To me, success is a fully optimized human being that is 100% aware or remembering who they are. That's the pursuit of pure success. As to what those gifts look like, how they function, it will look different to different people. So what I would say is, don't chase the world's definition of success, though I don't like saying that sometimes too, because then what you see is this essentially rebellion or anti-success as success, which is very common in our culture right now.
Yeah, totally.
Right? It's I don't have possessions because I don't want to be status, but that is my status.
And it's always right on the heels of them not having any possessions because they fucked up.
It's just,
Like it's like you see it all the time.
It's totally a choice. Like,
I don't do relationships anymore after you got divorced.
Right. I figured out that just wasn't my thing.
The work is always obvious, right? It is, because it's like a peaceful, and this always comes from love too, where you can sense that it's like a choice, and that's very different than a reactive
Totally.
Yeah.
Right. And that's your choice point. So you may get to a certain point where it's like, hey, these things are important to me. These things aren't important to me.
Yeah.
Right. So for me, the tools that I need and are equipped with to do the work I'm here to do involve certain levels of materialism and status, but it has nothing to do with who I am. And that's it's people are starting to figure that out as they get to see my content and get to know me. They're like, oh, wow, you're not what we thought. And I realize I've heard that in my entire life.
Yeah.
My entire life, I feel like I've been misunderstood, and people will be like, "You're not
Do you
what
remember
we
what
thought
you told
you were."
Adam and I at Oak Table?
I'm a conduit.
I'm a conduit. I'm not joking. And that's what I love about you so much is you don't accumulate to stagnate or to have. It's you are one of the most generous people I've ever met. And you were generous before you had like possessions. And so that's your nature. So that I think is the trust and why the attraction level is so strong is because this is coming from a healthy, heartfelt place. Like that's what I feel.
Yeah.
And I've had a first, I've been in the front row the whole time.
Yeah. This is the work. I appreciate you, brother.
I love you.
I
I can't watch the fucking Mandalorian anymore because of you. Every time they say this is the work, I'm like, oh.
No, it doesn't say this is the work though. It says
this is the way.
This is the way.
But I know why
spoken?
you say it. Yeah, the way you say it is always how he says it. I'm like, oh my god. Do we all have to start wearing helmets and like? So you need to finish book 2, book 3, book 4. 5 and 6 they go into the weeds, but book 4 is the penultimate experience.
Well, I'm in, and I need a break.
Fiction.
I need a break from the Wheel of Time
Just to give you a little idea, to me, the Wheel of Time is the flea on the tiger compared to the Dune series.
Jesus,
no joke. It's
Okay.
kids' child's play.
Well, I love that. That's
The language is richer, but Wheel of Time is amazing for its own reasons. But
yeah, I've enjoyed the Wheel of Time. We'll just close here, but I'll just come in full circle on the book thing. And you know this, most of my growing up, I actively avoided fiction.
Yeah.
Because I felt like it was useless.
That was us.
Right.
Blue and red, fiction, nonfiction.
Yeah, like what the fuck am I
Science
going
and
to
art.
What am I going to do with
I remember
non-factual information?
Yeah.
Like that seems useless to me. And then it came back to me in remembrance finally, like, oh right, some of the original word that I heard that pondered this is, what is the difference between fiction and nonfiction? And I was like, what do you mean? Right? That was the remembrance. That was the crack of light that brought in. And I'm like, but fiction is, and nonfiction is. I'm like, oh. I'm like,
Exactly.
okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
And so then I got really obsessed with fiction. And fiction, whether it be music, art, books, movies, it has the collective ability energetically to impact consciousness at a macro level, where you can interject concepts of truth that maybe have been forgotten and can be resurrected in a palatable way through art and literature.
Yeah.
Because it's your mind won't resist it because you go, oh, this is just fiction, right?
Yeah.
And it's in a beautiful example of that is when Star Wars was originally released, most of the technology was not something that would have been relatable to, right? Like there's no way to understand it. Now, 40-something years later, most of the technology is something that we either have a working hypothesis for or in some cases actually have, which is a really cool thing. Well, what happened? I think it's Aristotle who gets credit for, maybe it was Plato, but saying it was Aristotle. The art and literature of today is a foreshadow of tomorrow because it gives the mind the ability to create an image of what can be and then begin to create or manifest around
it's
that.
Incredible teacher.
Yeah, it's the best teacher.
It's such a good. And if you remember, I wrote a blog about that, about fantasy, and I got into it because I was suffering, and you could go into a world, and like your brain, literally, my brain would go because when I read, I see it, I visualize everything, and so that's how I gauge the experience: is how well did you craft this world for me, and then I make it better. Yes. And so and that's a very powerful meditation.
And all that to say, I think fiction is beautiful. I'm a big fan of it now.
Me too.
Well, brother, we've gone long, but hopefully everybody will enjoy this one. It's great having you on. We'll have to do this more often. You and I chat it up, a little Chansky. Let us know what you think. Joel, do you have any handles here? People you want people to find you on?
No,
I don't think so. Yeah, he keeps it.
But I am going to re-enter the world here shortly. You'll see me.
which is exciting. And you're writing much?
I am writing a ton.
Good.
I'm writing a book for my son right
Reading
now.
and writing. Oh, that's awesome.
No, you were there when I had the spawn of it. The fox and the owl.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I'm finishing that now.
Cool. I love it. All right. Well, it was a good one. Peace.